Welcome back to the Innovative Agents, everybody. Sharon Toerek here with you again, and it is a season of change in agency land. I'm sure that I don't have to be the one to break that news to you. You're all experiencing it every day. And one of the things we're seeing that is dynamic in the independent agency world, and has been honestly for the last 18 to 24 months, is the amount of M&A activity that we're seeing in the marketplace. And it's just one more bit of turbulence that you are all dealing with now in your industry, along with dealing with AI's convergence on how you do business, along with dealing with what the economy and that means to your clients and therefore your businesses. We have a lot of agency owners in a position of thinking about transition, whether that means their team members might be the next generation of ownership, whether they're looking for a third party strategic buyer. And I often wonder, as we kind of work with owners who are in this process or buyers are in this process, what does it feel like on the other side? What does the experience feel like of an agency owner who has put their energy, their time, their blood into building something and then deciding to hand it over, for whatever reason that is. And so I'm thrilled today to have actually somebody who's been through the trenches and is currently still in the trenches. Mike Harris, first of all, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
It's great to meet you. And I love the podcast, and I kind of use it as a tool for any time I'm having an issue. I can just sort of scroll through the episodes and find whatever issue I'm having, and use that as a resource. So it's great to meet you in actual one-on-one.
That is awesome. I appreciate that, and it's great to meet you too, one on one. I think I said this to somebody the other day. I'm still surprised when somebody tells me they listen regularly, but I appreciate it. And we have covered a lot of ground with a lot of really fabulous guests on the show, and now you're in the club. So I really appreciate you making the time to have the conversation. So let's set the stage for everybody for a minute. So currently you're COO and your partner at Uproar by Moburst, which sounds like a very long agency name, but there's a reason for that. You're a co-founder of the agency Uproar. Do I have it right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, PR communications agency that you co-founded, and you've been through this process of acquisition and strategic
Twice.
change now 2 times. Not yeah, I
Yes.
was building up to it.
Oh,
Not
sorry, I
just
didn't mean to
once,
give
but
it
no,
away.
that's okay. It's fascinating enough to get into the mind of somebody who's done it once, but now you've done it twice. And we had a brief conversation before we started the interview today, and you're kind of not done. You're looking for other strategic opportunities too. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about first of all, a little bit about your founding story. Tell me a little bit about building Uproar initially and how you got it to that point where you just decided that to grow or to get where you wanted to go, looking for a strategic buyer made sense for you.
Yeah, so my wife and I met at a TV station in San Francisco, CBS, and she left to go into PR, and then her company brought me over to do new business at their agency, and we worked at that agency for 4 or 5 years, and they kept offering this. We we were really running the agency. I mean, she was running the PR side, I was running the new business side. We grew them fourfold, and they kept telling us that they were going to give us partner, partner, partner,
Mm,
and it never happened. So, long story short, we just got to a point where we were like, we can do this. Like we're good. We can do this on our own. And so we jumped off, and it was scary, and we had 2 kids and a mortgage, and but we figured we'll give it a go, and if it doesn't work out, we can always get jobs again, right? So we started this agency, and it was great. It, it was small. It was me and my wife and half an employee at first. We never borrowed any money.
uh-huh.
and we just sort of grinded and built this agency, and it was really fun. Like that, it wasn't just, oh, this is great that we're building something with equity, or we never really thought about that at the beginning. It was just fun to do PR again and enjoy doing it. And
Mhm.
and I would say, like, of the managing chaos piece, that episode that I watched, the one thing I would add to that is that if you start an agency with your spouse or your significant other, make sure that you delineate completely separate roles, because we got to the point where we almost were like at a divorce stage, because we both were used to being in charge and we were colliding, and we figured it out luckily in time, and separated out the roles, and everything was great.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely, we could do a whole episode, right, about running a business with your spouse, I'm
Of
sure.
course. Yeah.
So you continue to grow Uproar, obviously. And what got you to the point, into the owner's mindset, if you will, that to take the next step to get where you wanted to go, you needed to be considering a strategic acquisition? Because I think for many owners of independent agencies, that's where it all starts. It is a mindset switch for the owner, and at some point that becomes a viable option on the table for them. So, what got you there? What made you and your wife, who I guess was still running the agency with you at the time, maybe still is running the agency you're at now, what got you there? What made you decide this makes sense for us? This is the next logical step in growing Uproar.
Yeah, so we grew the agency really organically. It was really about building relationships and finding clients and having those clients refer you to other clients naturally, and just naturally growing this agency. And our sweet spot was when we got to like 30 employees. It was really good. We had great clients, we had great people, and we were able to sort of, anything that came up, we were just able to deal with it, and it was fine. Once we got up to like 50 employees, it was chaos. Like, and we had to sort of make a decision. Basically, we were playing defense more than we were playing offense, right?
Mhm,
Like at the beginning, it was like, hey, let's go get clients, let's collaborate, let's do things, right? And then eventually it becomes, you're not doing PR anymore. You're managing P&Ls, you're managing HR, you're managing uh, all the things that go with running a business more, almost exclusively. I would say more than running a PR agency is, you're not running a PR agency anymore. You're now just managing numbers and people. And it was like every Friday, my stress became, oh God, who's going to quit because someone offers them a little more money or a little more whatever. And
mhm,
it just got to the point where the stress wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth the it wasn't worth everything that went into it anymore, and it wasn't fun anymore.
mhm,
And so I think a lot of agency owners, at least people that I've talked to, have sort of that same sort of, those numbers hit for them. 30, it was great. 50, it got rough. And by 60, it was like, all right, it's too much. Like
mhm,
I gotta move on. And so that's when we called a broker, and we thought that, I mean, that's all we really knew, was to just sort of have our business valued and see what sort of a next step looked like.
mhm. Did you, what would you tell an owner that sort of that is there a certain number of people, do you feel like? Was it a certain level of revenue? Was it a certain, I don't know, was it a size-based determination? Or when do you feel like it got beyond the point where it took you so far away from maybe your why in starting it that I know you said 30 felt manageable, 50 felt a lot of pressure, 60 was just, you know,
It was
train
a
off
breaking
tracks.
point.
Yeah. Um, did you feel, was it a
I
just,
wasn't I wasn't like an MBA, right? I didn't come in to start a business. I came in to
yeah.
start an agency. I
Yeah.
came in to do creative work. Like I said, my wife and I met in TV. I was a sports producer. Like I really enjoy knowing clients. The whole our, we have this amazing client retention rate of like 5+ years,
Mhm.
and we don't have long-term contracts. Every client has a 30-day out. They can leave at any point. But it was building these relationships, and it's not phony. Like it's not like, oh, build the relationship so that you can keep the client. It's just
Mhm.
like you meet these people and you fall in love with their stories and you fall in love with what they're trying to build, and you become part of building their company, right? Like there was a company called Hyper Ice that we started with as a Kickstarter. I don't know if you're familiar with them. I actually always have their products sitting at my desk, but before those like massage guns were a thing, these guys like created it, and they had a Kickstarter and it was failing, and they called us and we were like, Kickstarters, I don't like Kickstarters, but you know what? We like these guys. Maybe this will be fun. Their
Mhm.
Kickstarter went from failing over the 3 weeks with us to we ended up getting like 3 times their goal. And they said,
Mhm.
look, can you stay on with us? I don't, we don't really have much money, but we have a dream, and I think there's something here. And we thought there was something there too. So we did it at a really small budget, and we came in and we helped them um, grow from a Kickstarter to a $1 billion company. And they had a new head of marketing come in, and their new head of marketing basically said to us, look what you're charging. You guys can't be a good agency because you're charging like I forget what it was, 3 or 4 thousand dollars a month for like this massive brand. Like you're too small potatoes. And I said, no, we have big clients. We just never raised their rates from when we started working with them, and we just loved working with them. It was never about money. And I think if it's not about money, and if it's not about look, if you're always thinking about how you're going to sell, you're never going to get to that point because you got to love it. You got to come in every day and love it. And when we got to a point where we weren't doing that anymore, we weren't able to manage relationships anymore, and we weren't able to do the work we really came in wanting to do. It just was time. Like someone
Mhm.
else take this, do the P&Ls, do the HR. If you want us to stick around, I'll stick around, but I want to do the creative work. I don't want to do the business work anymore.
Well, I think this is so important because so many agency owners were not intentional about becoming owners. They never intended to found an agency. They either um, hung a shingle after they, left another situation, or they developed a reputation for excellence in their craft, and the business just sort of attracted to them, like metal to magnet over, a period of time. Whatever it might be, there's a lot of agency owners of small and mid-sized firms that are unintentional owners. They just did not expect to be founders. And so it's not surprising that they get where you got, which was very far away from the work they started the business to be doing day to day. All right, so you had the mindset shift that, all right, we're too far away from our why, the reason why we started doing what we're doing. So let's look at our options. And then you started communicating with the broker. So
Yeah,
walk us, go ahead.
go ahead. No, no, go ahead.
Well, so walk us through the process of, as as first timers, of going through this whole process of dating. I always like to call it the dating, or the courting. First it's dating, then it's courting, then it's getting married if you actually go through with a transaction. So tell me about what it was like, especially that as a first time agency owner going through it. Um, and what was it like? And what do you think other agency owners need to know or expect about that process that they might not be thinking about right now?
So we had a broker come to us, and we had kind of been thinking about it, but we never like proactively went out and found a broker to value our agency. We didn't know what it could be worth, and we didn't know how to go about the process. So this guy called us. I said, "Sure, come in. We'll talk to you." We had a long meeting. He brought us back a value for our agency that he thought he could go out and get, and it was a lot. It was it was,
You don't
I'm
have to
trying
say
to remember.
numbers.
Well, it
You
was,
can, but you
I'll
don't have
tell
to.
you that it was a lot more than what we thought it would be. And it was, you know, it was enough to like set us up for the rest of our lives to just be good,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I was a little blown away. And so I called a guy who was a client like 3 times, and I said, hey, would you mind, like, he's a business guy, so would you mind taking a look at these numbers this broker gave us, and just tell me if you think this is realistic. And he said, sure, send me over your P&Ls and I'll look at it and I'll look at what he sent you. And he called us like an hour later and he said, if you guys are good with this, I will buy your agency right now for exactly this number. Like, looking at your P&Ls and looking at your business, this is a great business. I said, oh, okay, cool. Like, this is a guy I like, I trust. Like,
Mhm.
he wants to buy the business. He said the one thing is, I'd want you and Katrina, my wife, to stay on and help me run it, because I know about running a business, but I don't know about running an agency. And so, long story short, we did the deal with him. The two great things were, one, look, if you need a broker and you need to go find somebody, they can be really beneficial, but they also will take about 10% of the of the the sale price.
Right.
So
Minimally.
yeah, so if you can avoid a broker, I think what you do, Sharon, this was so important for when we sold, right? Having a great attorney who knows agency acquisition was like a godsend for us, because there's so many little pieces that they know and they've been there and they can add into the deal that you'd never know about. And I think that's the number one most important thing, is to get, someone like you who knows agency acquisition, who knows the finer details, and not try to just do it yourself, or just find a buddy who's an attorney who doesn't necessarily know the space, because there are so many intricacies that this attorney helped us with that we never would have known, and saved us on deal number two.
Yeah, I appreciate the call out. I think what I would, my reaction to that would be, this is the one time in the lifespan of your career as an entrepreneur, is when you are packaging up your life's work here in terms of building this thing. And, it's most likely your most significant asset at that point. Not always, but for many of the agencies we see, it certainly is. And really making sure you have carefully invested in the professional advisors that you need. Yes, legal is one component of it, but also having along the way a really qualified financial person who understands how agency business models work, where you really make money, what your margins are, what profit looks like for you. Um, Advise you in the transaction is critical. And there and the broker can be critical too. I mean, they're just like in any other professional services circle, legal, finance, whatever, they vary in effectiveness and in quality, and they have different standards when it comes to we've seen burn and churn situations just as much as we've seen really invested brokers in the transaction. So you have to pick your team wisely. And so I think that's really great takeaway for agency owners to have. And one thing I'd love to get your feedback on, this is somewhat related, but not completely, is looking back on it, how far in advance of being ready to do this do you feel like owners need to be getting their ducks in a row for being ready for the transaction?
Probably more than we did, right? We
Talk
we
about that
didn't.
a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of hit us pretty quick, because the growth happened. f- the early growth happened steady, but from 30 to 60 happened pretty quickly. And
Mhm.
so, we're two people running an agency, and we had some really good. We had a couple really good VPs who really helped us run this agency and do a really great job for us. Um, and but but look, I will tell you that when you get judged by the people who are looking to buy your agency, they're looking at your profitability. I keep hearing from companies where they look at top line, top line, top line. They want to look at revenue. For me, like we never looked at revenue. I mean, you do, but more than anything, profitability, right? Because at the end of the day, you could be if you're bringing in 10 million in revenue and only taking home half a million in profitability, it doesn't seem like a lot of return on your work. And
Mm-hmm.
so we continue to hear from companies top line, top line. I've always been bottom line. And that always worked really well for us. As we've always been, what I've always heard is that a healthy margin for an agency is about 20%, give or take.
Yeah.
And we were running at about 30 and doing really well, and our customers were happy, and our team was pretty happy, and everything was flowing pretty well. But luckily, right, like only because we focused on bottom line, but we never thought about like how much revenue or or raising rates on clients that you can, even just a little bit, just cost of living. Like I said, we had that client who we brought on at the beginning, and we never raised their rates the entire time, years,
Yeah.
and we got burned for that. Not only in by the new head of marketing who came in and decided that we weren't worth our salt because we hadn't raised our rates, but
That
also,
story kills me, by the way. It just stabs me in the heart, but go
well, the good news is that their head of sales and their CEO and their president and their founder are all still really good friends. We actually still do stuff together. They still have a different agency, but we're
on.
still super, super close. We text, and
Yeah.
so it's great. Like it is again, it's relationships, but also like if advice um for I don't know, like it's hard for me because I still believe that this is a relationship business. As much as we get into AI and as much as we get into all this technical stuff,
Mhm.
I believe that retention is key. And the only way to build real retention is to build real relationships with clients. And
Mhm.
like, and it can't be fake, it can't be forced. Like I keep on my desk, I keep note cards, uh,
Yep.
just like little thank you notes. And anytime I'm thinking about it, where an agency just sort of, or an agency, a client or a partner really touches me, I just pick one up and just start writing a note. And
Mhm.
I think it matters more. Like those clients people will send gifts to clients, flowers and all kinds of gifts. To me, I think what matters more than anything is just a nice handwritten note from the heart will
Mhm.
do more than anything.
Yeah.
And so I would say like on the sales side, like look, know what you're worth. And I never want to gouge a client. I never want to figure out how much they have so I can get as much from them as possible. But I think if I had a flaw, if we had a flaw running our agency, we didn't always know our worth. We were bad about like going back and saying, look, things have gotten a lot more expensive. I'm paying my employees double what I paid them when you came on, but I'm still like down here. But
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, for me, it's just really about relationships. And if you can get them to come with you, that's great. And I would, I
Yeah,
think
and
if you
they may make
build
their
that
way
in.
back, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but somehow I feel like if you just do the right things and you build real relationships, and you, even if you didn't raise rates on people, that somehow it all just comes around, and goodwill like does more, I think, than anything. Like we get more referrals from clients who are just friends and happy, and you adjust your rates for new clients coming in, but
Mhm.
I don't know. I think that worked for us, and it's so much harder to get a new client than it is to retain the ones you have. That if you just focus on retention, the new business will come, right?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
you just focus on making sure your clients are so happy. they're just going to refer you new clients, and the business will continue to come in.
I'm going to put a pin in that because I want to come back to it in a second because it leads me to another important question I want to ask you about this transition for you and your business and your team but we're only halfway through the story. So you make it through acquisition number one, with this broker's assistance inadvertently because it led you to go to your key client and contact, and they said, "Hey, what about us?" And so you completed that transaction, correct? All right. So
In 2019,
2019, that's 6 years ago.
right before COVID.
All right. So tell us what happened next because that was acquisition one, and now you're on the other side of acquisition two at this point. So
Yeah.
what's the next chapter in the story? This is
Well, so
wild.
COVID hits. We just sold this company and got our like nest egg put away. And a few months after that, we have hospitality clients. 40% of our clients were hospitality, and
I know.
every one of them
These are
gave
unicorns.
notice.
You're
Oh,
unicorns.
within like a week of each other, we lost 40% of our business
Oh,
in in 1 week. And this was right after the sale. So now we're feeling like, oh, sorry, man. Like, I know that sucks for you, but it's boy, good timing for us.
oh
Um,
no.
yeah, so it was tough. I think he spent the better part of 6 years owning that agency trying to recover from that. Like, you lose 40% of your business in 1 day, and that he didn't lay anybody off. I will say, like, he did things the right way, and he really tried his best to like recover, but it was just hard, right? I mean, it's just that's a 40% in one week is like a gut punch that you can't take. That's like Mike Tyson coming just throwing you a left hook right after you bought this agency.
This story is even better than I thought it was. All right. So, I mean, unfortunately, not for the acquirer in that circumstance, but all right. So, talk about resilience. So, this purchaser is now sitting on an asset that's not going to be able to perform like it was performing, on the day the ink dried on your deal through nobody's fault.
And
So,
we still own 20% of the back end, and we put it into the business. So now we're the
you're at
20% of it,
risk as
we're
well.
sinking with them. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're all at risk because of the way the economy just stood still in the wake of the pandemic and because of the vertical that you were operating deeply in. So, gosh, I don't know which path to take next with this in terms of how I'm going to ask you questions. Because let me just be candid. I've got questions about how you kept, and one of my questions before that I just asked to put a pin in was keeping your team and their morale and their culture intact through what I thought was going to be just ownership transition, but it was ownership transition plus economic circumstances. How did you deal with this phase of running the business after you were no longer the majority owners of it and keeping your team positive, performing, all of it? Walk us through that so the agency owners listening can kind of get a flavor of what your life was like in those days.
Yeah. So Ermis, the guy who bought our business, he really kept us like front and center, helping him run this thing. Look, you guys know agencies, help me dig out of this. And one of the things that we ended up doing was one of our really key people who's now been with us 10 years. She jumped in. We asked her she wanted to do something new, and we asked her um, to come in and be a VP of culture because we're losing people left and right. COVID hits, people are working from home. Agencies in New York are calling our people because we're paying them half of what New York costs, right? Because
Right,
they're living in Florida, and it's a different, you know,
right.
set of numbers. And so they're able to come and pick our people off. And even if they're paying them double, it's nothing to them. It's their normal price. So
Mhm.
everything basically just got a lot more expensive to try. We were just trying to keep people. Um, we hired her to come in and sort of keep the culture right. And meanwhile, now, like, we need to go find new clients who are willing to pay a lot more during COVID, where like nobody's looking to spend money. And
Mhm.
so it was a real struggle for, look, I mean, we didn't sell again till the end of 24, which was this past December, January. And
Mhm.
it was a struggle for a big chunk of time. And I think we were okay, but never really like came out of it the way we needed to come out of it. And so I think we were talking to Hermes and we were like, look, I think it's time. Like, we gotta find somebody who can come in and give us a fresh start, because he was always, this is not his fault. He got that gut punch and he just never really recovered from that. And it
Mhm.
was very hard to keep the agency running. And to his credit, he always robbed Peter to pay Paul and figured out a way to kind of keep it going and keep everybody paid and keep everybody on board. But it was getting hard. And I think so me and my wife kind of were like, okay, this is too hard for us. Like, we've been good soldiers for 5 years, but something's got to change or we got to go. And she actually got to a point where she got an offer from a restaurant brand that needed a CMO, and it was a great opportunity. So she ended up going there, which was great for her.
Mhm.
And I mean, we had the real conversation, and he knew it was time, and we knew it was time, and so he went out looking for a good partner to sort of pass this off to, and that's where we found Moburst.
Okay. So it sounds like you did everything right in terms of culture preservation, in terms of doing right by the people who you brought with you under the new ownership, a good owner, doing the right things for the right reasons, just economic circumstances that made it challenging for the business to thrive at all. So tell me about the process of finding the new strategic buyer, which is the current owner now of the business. How did that search go? Was that a relationship that somebody had? Did you actually go to market and look for a strategic buyer? What happened?
So he used a broker for this one,
Okay.
and it was really we wanted to find an agency that was not a PR agency just looking to fold us in and we disappear, right? The perfect scenario for us would be an agency that does everything, right? Because all we do is PR, we do media relations and thought leadership. We did a little bit of social media and influencers as needed for clients, but it wasn't core. Core was media relations and thought leadership. And so we found an agency that boy, they're this great marketing agency. They do all the things that we didn't do: SEO, digital marketing. We did social media, but on a smaller scale. They did it on a bigger scale. Influencers on a bigger, like, they did everything except for PR. And when we first met with the founding partners, we said, I mean, they were like, look, it was really nice. Like, they were like, look, we want you guys because we think you have a great business, and we know you took a hit during COVID and that is just hard to recover from. But we think that the clients you've been able to keep and the people you've been able to keep and the agency you've been able to continue to run will be great. And we want to keep you guys as Uproar because we think there's a brand there that is recognizable and you've done good work. And
Mhm.
so we don't want to dissolve you into nothing. We want you to sort of run your own business that's a part of this larger business. And all of that sounded amazing. So and now you've got this company that's been really successful where they are. And they said the only thing is we don't run a PR agency, so you have to come with it. You can't exit stage left. Like, you need to come. So instead of taking my piece on that last sale, I rolled it into equity in the larger company, Moburst, and stayed on with them as well.
Tell me what that process felt like versus the first time that you sold your business.
Um, it was a relief. The first time we sold our business, it was hard. Like I understand now that when agency owners sell their business and they kind of get sad. This is this thing that they've built and they've they've put their heart and soul into. I mean, I have two daughters who were I missed a lot of their like younger years traveling and building this business.
Hmm.
And for us, selling the business was getting back to them a little bit, but also like um, it was hard because this business had become your baby, and so to just hand it to someone else and have them make decisions for your agency, it takes time to go, oh my God, I don't own this thing anymore. I don't make the decisions anymore. I don't, all these things that used to come with owning an agency, even though I'm still running it, helping to run it, I don't have those things anymore. And that takes a little time to it hurts. And
Yeah.
so that the first time I really felt that a lot. The second time I felt none of that. It was a relief. Like we got this great agency where we're getting everything. This was a lifeboat, right? From to save us from all the COVID mess and everything else. And this great agency wants to buy us and they want me to come in and they're going to give equity and they're taking care of all of our employees and everything's good. And they've got this growth system that they're going to grow this agency and acquire it. So we've acquired one agency since it's been 6 months. We've acquired one agency and we're close to acquiring another agency, and so we're doing all kinds of really cool new things. And I don't have that sadness anymore because I've already been through it once. You
Yeah.
know, so that feels a little different to me. I'm excited this time versus a little sad the first time.
Well, it's a good, I think, testament to the way that an entrepreneur can get reinvigorated by a sale like this, which is kind of the opposite of what many owners might be thinking, in terms of most owners don't plan to stay on in a circumstance like this where they would sell to a global firm who's, you know, buying you and going to run you as part of a larger enterprise. What's it like navigating within a larger ecosystem like that versus having built a small one from the ground up? How is it, how does it feel different?
I
First of
kind of
all,
love it.
do you? Okay.
Yeah. I just, it's not all on you, right? Like, I feel like everything always came back to us, whether it was an HR issue or a financial issue or a client issue, or
Mhm.
everything came back to me or Katrina. And it was a lot by the time, like I said, when you're 60 people and 13 teams, you're playing whack-a-mole everywhere, and you're going, what's next? What's going to be the next thing that comes up that I gotta hit. It was like you're losing sleep, right? And
Yeah.
now we're so deep, right? Like we've got now the two founding partners at our company probably don't feel that way, but because I always have someone to go to. We have a creative team, we have a digital marketing team, we have a podcast team, we have all the teams, everything that we need. And so I'm happy for them to come to me for whatever they need from me, but when they need HR, they go to HR. When they need and and so now it frees us up to like last week we went on a final due diligence meeting to look at this company, and it was fun. Like it was great. Like we're doing new things, and the person who I told you was that VP of culture is now one of my like key leaders in this company. And so she's been here 10 years. And so that's Courtney. And then Frank, who's been with us 7 years, is running all the clients. So like there's just this great like tree of great people who we've been able to keep through all that craziness. And and everybody sort of has a role. It's not just everybody like with the chaos, right? So that,
Yeah.
like I said, I listened to your managing agency chaos episode, and I it like gave me flashbacks, right? And so I now this is great. Like, you know, I don't know that selling your agency is always the this great thing. And Ermis, the our partner who sold when we sold to the last time, who pretty much ended up kind of exiting. I don't know if it was a great experience for him. You know, I mean, it just he sort of came in with this great idea to grow this thing, and then COVID punches him in the face, and then 6 years later he kind of leaves with kind of break even, whatever it was.
Yeah.
it it's not some great thing, but for me, like, this is awesome. Like, it is like a second life, and
Mhm.
um a second bite of the apple that also is like exciting and fun and new, and so it's really great.
What advice would you have for agency owners about keeping the morale high among, because sounds like most of your core team has survived intact through all of this transition. I get the sense that a lot of the people who've been with you since the early days are still with you in this bigger organization. And so, what sort of words of wisdom do you have for agency owners about sort of not the hand holding, but the leadership that they have to show
Yeah.
to the rank and file members of the agency through all these different changes and transitions? I mean, yours happen to have had a big fat pandemic in the middle of it all of your story, but there were still transitions associated with the ownership changes. And so
Yeah.
how do you be an ally as the owner leader of the agency during this process to any given individual who works in the organization? Because I think in addition to the mindset challenge they face, I think for lots of agency owners I talk to, taking care of their people and whether or not their people are going to be okay. Now, some owners care more about that than other owners, just because we're all human and we care about different things. But
But
number
they're
one,
your product.
yeah, they think a lot about it. And so, what words or pearls of wisdom do you have on that for those folks?
Yeah, I don't know if it's wisdom or just I've been through it, but look, when you're selling an agency, there's this. I always try to pride myself on never lying to our team.
Mhm.
Never, ever lie. Now, I didn't lie, but I certainly didn't tell them that we were looking at selling the agency because we didn't want them panicking.
Yeah.
So, so that part of it, I don't think you can avoid, but there are moments, especially when you hit tough times, where you just want to tell them nice things because you don't want them to freak out and you don't want them to panic. And at the end of the day, like, this is what when we were going through this sale the last time, and employees would come to me, I never lied to them. I never lied, and I feel like that's critical. They have to be able to trust you. They have to know that if you tell them something, it's the truth. And that if there's a way that you can help them, that you're doing everything you can do. And you never want to lose somebody. You never, especially somebody who's really great and critical to what you're doing. And so, to me, look, there were moments where I couldn't give someone a raise. I couldn't give them a promotion. there there were moments where we had to, cut out really great things that they loved. And one of the things that we really focused on was culture. And we did a, every year we do this white elephant, and it's company funded, and it's usually about a $10 or $15,000 of just gifts for employees. And it was everything from like a big gift to like a Peloton or a big TV or something, down to like something little, but everybody got something. And it just, just things like that. And but at the end of the day, I think people just want to be valued. They want to know that you appreciate what they do. And if you own a company and or even if you just are managing or helping or directing or whatever you do, just look, you're going to come down on them when they do something wrong. Give them Call them out personally when they do something great. Like, I call one of our account managers last week, and I just called her. It was like 7 o'clock at night, and I was just thinking about like all the really great things she'd done lately. And I picked up the phone, and it's probably weird because, like, why is my boss calling me at 7 o'clock at night? But I just picked up the phone and I said, "Hey, Abby, I just want to tell you, like, you've been crushing it lately, and I notice it, and other people are noticing it. And I just feel like you should know that we all really appreciate it, and we're really like proud of you for what you're doing, and it's all gonna, pay off. And I think if you can do that, at least occasionally, and just say, "Hey, you're doing great." 'Cause I told her, I said, if there was some big problem, I would call you and tell you that. So I want to call you and tell you that you're doing a great job. And I think that just like these thank you notes matter to a personal note matters to a client, as much as we innovate and as much as we go into AI and all these new things that are around the corner, the core still remains that people want to be appreciated, and people want to be um, feel like they're part of something. And if you can make them feel that, then I think you can overcome where you may not be able to give a raise at a certain point. But God, I love your work. God, I love working with you, man. It's never family because you can't fire family, but it's the next best thing. And I
Yeah.
think if you can make people feel that, then you've done something good.
Well, and I think it also helps, it ratchets up the level of trust between them and you during a transitional time, right? New owners
Yeah.
are coming in. What's that going to mean? And do we
Tell
believe?
the truth,
Yeah, yeah. Do we believe
even
the
if it's
story?
hard.
Yeah, yeah. It's so true that nice and kind are not always the same thing, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes we're being nice, but not necessarily kind. And sometimes being kind doesn't feel nice, but actually is for everybody's benefit. So
And just being honest. I mean, I feel like the first time you lie, that's it. You've completely lost their trust. You
yeah,
lie to them once, they know you're willing to lie to them, and then that's it. So just I would say if there's one fine point, don't ever lie. You
yeah,
do what you need to do, but don't lie.
yeah. Well, I think that's a mic drop moment right there. And this has been such a fascinating conversation, and I know that folks listening here are going to see themselves in the walk that you and your wife have taken through this whole thing. And so, Mike Harris, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story so far. I mean, I feel like I'm on the edge of my seat waiting to see what's going to happen next. But um, speaking of, if people want to get in touch with you or learn more about the work that you're doing now, what are some of the best places that they can reach out and find you?
Email, it's michael.harris@moburst.com, or LinkedIn or Instagram. I think my LinkedIn is Uproar Mike. And yeah, I mean, I love, obviously, like, I love meeting people. I love talking to people. It was great meeting you. And I would say, like, look, if you're lucky enough to get to a place where you can give yourself, like, the financial, like, stability to not have to worry. Like, my daughter this is what I'm enjoying now. My daughter, well, I have two daughters. One's in high school still. One graduated last year, and she's a rower, and she's a pretty elite rower. She got recruited by schools all over the country, and she was getting full ride offers from Washington. She could have gone to Stanford or Texas or Notre Dame, and then Yale and Princeton both looked at them. Well,
Well,
um, the Ivy Leagues don't offer financial, they
hmm
don't offer scholarships for athletics. And one of the things that this sale of this company offered me was the ability to say she really wanted to go to Yale. I mean, she loved the school, she loved the people, she just loved it, and she knew it was her place. And
hmm
without the sale, I don't know that I could have said to her, "Yes, we got it. Don't worry about it. Don't even think about it. You don't need to be buried in loans. We got you." And that was the
hmm
greatest gift that this acquisition and this PR agency has given to us, is that we can give our daughters the things that they need and want in life, and be able to go and share that and watch her compete. They just won a national championship last week. It was so awesome. So
amazing.
to me, like, that's why you put in the hard work, is so that you can, your family, your friends, even your employees, like those people, if you can help them, and it's the best reward.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has their why, and I can't think of a better one than the one you just described. So that's amazing all the way around. Well, hi,
Awesome.
Karis. Thank you so much for joining me on Innovative Agency here today. I have so enjoyed hearing your story. I'm staying tuned to see what happens next. And
Great.
I want to thank you, and I want to thank everybody watching or listening today for joining us. I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next episode. And until
Thank you so much too, and I really appreciate it. And it was really, really great to meet you and to talk to you. And I really, really have enjoyed it.
you will, everybody be well until the next episode.